think as a witch, and as I said before, my favourite definition of witchcraft is, our ability to change consciousness at will. Yeah, our ability to, to create change within, and the universe, and Mama Earth, whoever, all of the above, sent me this incredible GP beforehand, and she and I spent 2 years seeing her often. There was inflammation markers up permanently from the time I started seeing her. And that was an indication that there was something going on. And we did, 6 months before my diagnosis, we did all the tests that you can do, right? So you can test for breast cancer, you can test for bowel cancer, you can test for, you can't actually test for pancreatic cancer. So even though we knew something was there, and I was willing to work with the system to find out what was going on, we didn't go there. We couldn't find it, and it wasn't until it fully arrived. But she helped prime my trust for the medical system, and it was the way she listened to me. It's the way she trusted me when I said what I have felt. And I think I walked into the Meadow, and I was at the Royal Melbourne, which is probably one of the best hospitals in this country. Like, Royal Melbourne is a beautiful group of humans, and they do powerful medicine. And just even witnessing the care of others in the room, just watching the beautiful nurses navigate, beautiful homeless people who are in a bad way, and just the way the humanity was in the room. And I just kept reaching for that and looking for it in every human I met in the system. And I think one of the things about witches and witchcraft is that we're deeply human. Yeah. And if we can, I could see the system, I can see the medicine, I can see the farmers, big pharma, I can see all of those things. Then amongst all of that are humans. Lots of really powerful, beautiful humans who do what they do because it's what they know, and that's what they trust. Yeah. And I helped myself to help them to help me. And I think those are the choices you can make about the industry. Yeah, you can see it for all of the money-making nonsense and bullshit in it, and you can see it for all of the power games and the godlike making things that we do with medicine, which we don't have to do. And all the humans in there prefer it when we don't. And that's what I've learned so far, is that they all made a knowing that, they understand that there's this divide, and they try and make it as safe for you psychologically as possible. And I think as an active space of craft, when you, I think that's another, maybe it's just my version of craft, but I've always trusted the power within. Yeah. And when we have power within, we don't need power over. So I didn't need to hand any power over. I was always encouraged and supported to bring my whole self to my healing. And I think that's the gift that witchcraft can bring us, is that we have skills of understanding of ourselves and compassion, I think, for humanity that lives there, or not, or some of us don't. I've met many of which who has zero compassion for the rest of the world. But my version of witchcraft is power within, and knowing my own, then respecting the power of everybody else as well. And there's nothing quite like knowing someone's name and making sure you know who that human is who just took your blood, and meeting that human, and to keep trusting and listening and knowing that there are no accidents in myself, in my journey. For me, there are no things that happen by chance or stupidity or accident. Like, there's purpose in this journey. And when I look at this whole purpose of this journey, and I realize that part of it has been just the capacity to let people love you as much as you love them. Because I've loved hard and real and deep and strong for a long time, for lots of people who I adore. And I'm not quite sure if I've ever given myself permission to let it back in again. And I think that's definitely one of the learned journeys I've been on this last year and a half since diagnosis, early July 2012. But is the power of letting people love you and hold you.
You know, I know in my own journey with cancer, there was um, this tension point between will and surrender. And we just
Yeah.
spoke about that before. And I know that for me, there were times when I didn't know, like, what to engage. You know, do I engage my will right now, or am I calling for a surrender? How do I dance life in that way where I'm come and meet the challenge of cancer, but also, and I use my will to choose life, but also I surrender to the greater picture, which I don't understand yet. And I'm curious how you navigated those thresholds, because that was the hardest part for me of knowing,
Yeah.
you know?
It is hard because, and I understand the language of battle, but I don't choose it because I don't consider this a battle. This is an evolution. And I think that mindset has held me all the way through this. Yeah. I trust, I mean, as I said before, I trust death. Yeah. I think as a witch, we learn that death is not something to fear. I'm not keen on pain. And, oops, sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay. Um, Yeah. So I think when we don't, like, I definitely found moments where, that was the wisdom in the moment, was to surrender, just to trust, to let go, know that it's not in my hands anymore, this moment. But the surgery, you just have to lie down and go, okay, all these beautiful, incredible, skilled humans, I'm just going to trust that everything that needs to happen will happen. Yeah. So there were no complications, right? I
That's
didn't
so
have
beautiful.
that was a really beautiful gift, right?
Mm,
And it's definitely what happens when everyone in the room is meant to be there doing
mm,
what they're meant to do.
mm,
And yeah, I've had I felt very held and blessed all the way through
mm,
by so many ways,
mm.
by people who know what they're doing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I trust that. And I think the moments when I had to, the exercise of my will happened when I realized that I have the other end of the string. All these incredible piece of professionals have one end and they'll do their job, but I have the job of showing up and of having the will to live. And I think when we have a will to live and we meet that with meet any of the diseases, the things that are not functioning properly, with the trust that there's some wisdom here to learn, yeah, and that if we can make our journey more effective.
Mm,
And it's not necessarily that you can dodge any of it because you
mm,
can't really dodge it. The
mm,
only way is through it.
mm,
But we know that as witches, we
mm,
know that that's the thing that we do the most deliciously, is that we
mm,
take deep responsibility for
mm,
ourselves, our words, our thoughts, our meaning,
mm,
our actions. Like, these are our what we wield, right? So when we wield that in a way that says our lives are as much as ours as we make them. Yeah. So if we disengage from the places, like, I've really tried hard not to do any Google doctoring. Like
mm,
I've got
mm,
an incredible cousin who's
mm,
a neuroscientist, and she and I have great conversations about the fundamental levels of what the medicines have been doing. And for me as a witch, again, I found that by understanding, and that's how I think this is how this one arrived.
mm,
Um, when I understood that after the surgery and after the recovery, there would still be chemo to come. Um, so this doll got made when I was still in recovery, when I was here, and at first I thought it was me rebuilding me after surgery, and then I got told that I was going to be needing to take chemo because of the way they found, because was it 24 out of 45 nodes that they pulled out during the surgery had cancer in them. So that was telling everybody that, oh, I needed chemo. And so when I was here at my brother's doing the recovery from the surgery, at first I just made the outline. I just made the doll shape. Like, I made the pieces. They weren't stuffed. They weren't turned. And then then when I got back to my own little apartment, I built the doll. I've built her. I sewed her in. It was me coming to terms with my new self, yeah, and my new building of my new self. And then when I restrung the key, and I popped the cinnabar rose, which was to me just to witness and to be in awe of the amount of love that's surrounded me in this whole journey. And so then when I popped her onto the doll, I didn't realize this was going to happen, but the moon of the mind of the moon, and this is the above world, which is the upper worlds. The middle world is this beautiful wooden bead, and what do you call them when they come from the outer space? Asteroid. a piece of asteroid, and then I don't know if you can see that, but there's a line in here which is the wire that holds us all together. And when you look at my body, it's exactly the same place the scar is. And when I saw her there, and I saw that, it's that thing you don't know in art when that moment's going to come, when that piece of incredible thing that happens in art when you're making something and it comes together and you go, oh, didn't know that was going to happen, but it did. And I watched myself, many times after the surgery, just have flash of my scar. And if you see my scar, and I was very proud of it in how powerful it feels to have it as this external. And when I'm allowed to have, because they say they don't want you to do tattoos for a year after chemo. I don't think I'll wait that long, but I'm going to use the scar as the core of a blade to do Hecate's blade tattoo on my belly, to honour the journey that I've been on with her, and to use that centerpiece and then it's a stone blade with a bone handle, and it's and because then after this was made, and I realised which her journey was going to be, which is to walk with me, and she's been with me in every single chemo session, and she sits on my lap when I do chemo, and I zone in, I sink in, I listen, and I understand what the chemo was doing, and it was working as well as it could, and just recently though we realised it's not working as much as it was. And I am no longer taking chemo because it's not, the costs are considered more than the benefit, which is where you get to with chemo. With a type of chemo, I've got 2 other types of chemo I can try, which we might try, but we're going to try radiation next, which must say threw me sideways. Like, I didn't think I could do chemo. I could do radiation. I didn't think radiation was going to happen. And so the first thought I had when they told me, and it took a good 24 hours to process that it was going to happen, was I thought to myself, like, because I can understand, and I use the doll to work what I call what has been called the poison path. So that's another version or another aspect of Hecate is the poison path, which is understanding that poisons can heal, and that pharmacus is the first word we had for witch. And so when we recognise that what we call allopathic or Western medicine has its roots deep and comes from a long line of human who've known how to be with herb, how to be with plant, and what we bring forward from those realms. And we've lost a lot of that respect, perhaps, but it doesn't mean that the medicine isn't always there. So the poison path, and I have only just skirted the edges of the poison path, and it's huge understandings. And Medea and Circe are the daughters of Hecate. That's one of the versions, I guess. And I think when we understand that the poisons are necessary, and I guess that's where I got to with the chemo, that the poisons were necessary up until they're not. And that journey has been supported, I guess, having her there at every time and having that journey clarified and understood what I was doing. So when I would sit with the doll in the chair receiving chemo, I would open to the power of the poison path and recognize that we have used poisons for millennia to create healing, and that's a way of meeting and moving through chemo. And so yeah, I didn't trust chemo. I didn't trust any of this before, but I found the ways to trust and to build that trust.
Yeah, you shared like you're not afraid of death. Of course, pain's another thing. But can you, share a bit about why? Yeah.
I think I've always found and respected that death, death is part of life. It's all the same. It's all the same journey in lots of ways. Yeah, and I don't know. I've always trusted that if I'm still here, I haven't learned it yet. So, and that yeah, over the years, I've had my fair share of people who've died. I remember a very dear friend of mine suicided, and she knew that she would set it up so that I would be the one to find her body because she knew I could. And I did, and held her parents and others through that death. But and then my brother's wife died, 7.5 years ago. And I was with her during the last 2 years of her cancer journey, and the beautiful kids, they were only 11 and 13 at the time when she died, and to live with them now here as near 19 and 21-year-old adults. And I stupidly thought I could protect them. I can't protect them from this. But we've had a lot more conversations, I think, as young adults to process their journey as young children. And there'll be, and I've kept it open. So we've had conversations of things that they recognise and remember from their own mother's journey. And that death, was beautiful, it was powerful, it was at home. And then I guess the death of my father, 2016, I was with him, I was holding his hand when he died. And it really was, we called in my grandmother, his mother. It's about 45 minutes before he actually died, and her presence in the room, she died maybe 2 years beforehand, and she was palpable in the room. I could feel her presence. And then, just so beautiful. It was just such a beautiful death. It was, he kept breathing, and then there was space, and there was breath, and there was space, and then there was no breath, just space, and he was gone. And you feel it. To me, I felt him leave, and it's why I trust that death is just the next adventure. Like it's just the next bit. And I've had some beautiful authors, I think, over time, and I can't underestimate things like Terry Pratchett's version of death. And I've read many of the Pratchetts and most of them, and death's presence in all of them, bar one of them, I think, it's comforting. And I have a relationship with death, and it came also from the way I bled and the menstruation. Because menstruation itself is a death practice for me. I consider it a death practice. It's a practice every cycle of letting go and being in a place where you can learn to trust death. It's like you can learn to trust the blood. You can learn to trust your emotional state. You can learn to trust the banshee. Yeah, I mean, and if we look at terror management theory, right? Terror management theory is that notion that the Western world mostly, and because the Western ones are pretty shit with death, and doesn't want to talk about, it doesn't want to be in relationship with death. It wants us all to just ignore it and presume it doesn't happen to anyone, and that's not useful. I think if we build a more honest, we don't hold our dead in the room. Yeah, we don't do the washing of the bodies. We don't do the vigils. We don't do but I mean, many cultures that aren't the Western white do, and they have a place for death at the table. Yeah, and once a year in a Samhain, we hold our mighty dead. I have a mighty dead altar in the other room, and I think that all of those moving parts, and it's my witchcraft as well. And I think the longer you are in witchcraft, the more you realize, death needs to have a space in your life because it's a real place, like winter, like spring. Yeah, both of them as inevitable as each other, and that place then creates. And so the bleeding practices, and then the other flip side of that bit was I was at my incredible niece's birth, and just as she was birthing, she smashed the right at the crowning. She smashed the umbilical cord. Fucking blood everywhere, and we were in a private hospital, private obstetrician. It was horrendous in so many ways, but but the baby hit the crash cart very limp, and she wasn't in her body. And everyone else was at the top end of the baby, and I was just at the bottom end of the baby, and I had my hand on her feet, and I could feel she was empty, she wasn't there. And I was kicked open. All that I know how as a Reiki channel as a witch, and I was just fucking calling her in like I had a baseball glove, and it's like, put it here, baby, put it here, come on in. And I felt her land in my hand. I felt her land in her body. And just as my father had left his body, I felt this beautiful young creature arrive into her body. And again, for me, that's why I can trust that I will be here as long as I can, as long as I need to, and then I will go. And that's how I trust death, and why I trust death. And to be honest, just recently I went and just to understand, I went and found out how voluntary assisted dying works in this country, in Victoria. Because as much as I trust death, I also recognise that, late stage pancreatic cancer can be very painful. There can be a lot of suffering involved in the end stages. And I'm not big on suffering. I'm not big on making others watch me suffer. And so I needed to know. And it was beautiful talking with my family about it, and my aunt, my sister, by heart as well as by law. But my sister, she's like, it's kind of like, it's the same choice as abortion is. It's not one you take lightly. It's one you recognise you have the right to exercise how you want to. It's a body autonomy decision. It's a decision that says, I choose this for me because I can and I will. And I talked to my daughter about it, and she's like, you do whatever you need to do for you, because it's, I don't want to put my kid through watching me die. And I am inspired by another sister from Glad who a couple of weeks back made that choice. She'd been in her journey with cancer for 6 years, and her kids, she'd been in remission, and she'd found some space, and then it all came crashing back, and she's like, no, I'm not fucking doing this again. I'm not putting my kids through this again. I'm not doing this. And so she created that choice for herself, and she did that. And it inspired, definitely, for sure. I'd had that kind of whole discussion of voluntary assisted dying as separate and quite far away. But then I chose to explore it and to understand it. And yeah, and I think it feels very healthy to know, okay, so it's a process. It takes, 2 weeks to do. You have to ask 3 times. You have to, the process looks like this. It has these moving parts to it, and it's a manageable thing. And I'd had already made the decision that I wanted to die at home, and that I wanted to. I also wanted to have a wake, a proper wake, and I may have a living wake as well. Living wake a couple of months before, when it looks pretty imminent. And while I'm still able to enjoy whiskey, because that's definitely part of a wake.
Since coming to facing your own mortality, what is it that has empowered you to want to keep living? Like what are the qualities that are like, okay, this is what I live for? I'm curious.
Yeah, I have a pretty profound love of my family. Yeah, and I do the idea of not being around to hold them, and there is a terror that I won't get to see my daughter have kids, and that's real. And I do really, really hope I get to see her become a mama, because she's going to be a fucking incredible mama. And, you know, she's at a time in her life where she's thinking pretty hard and wanting to build the space of it. And I would love to live in Scotland with her for a couple of years at least. But if that happens, that happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't want to go over there yet, though. I don't want her to have to navigate and manage me and my illness alone. Like, what I've got here is such a huge amount of support, and the medicine in this country is just, it's incredible, the level of medicine we have here. And but it's also the work that I've lived my whole life doing. Like, so writing, making, like, I remember before I went into surgery for the Whipple, I had a very dear friend of mine who's also a writer, and I asked her if I could place the gi upon her shoulders of making sure the work got published if I died in surgery, because this book was, you know, it's my years of teaching Starfire encapsulated in something that could be handed on. And she made that promise, and then she gave it back to me. Gave the key back to me when I got out of surgery. She goes, "No, you can have this now," because I know. And she did help me. She did a first edit of it because it hadn't been read or even edited by anyone at that stage. And so, and now it's like I've sent it off to my two beautiful people who are doing my Jane Bennett and Jane Harper Collins are doing my forward, and it's near ready. I keep going, I should add that. I should add that. So my
For those who don't know about your book, can you talk about Starfire? Like, for those who don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Starfire is where I met you when I was teaching in, I think it was up in the hills. We were in a yurt or something. I think we had a big, beautiful green space to work in. And so Starfire is the body of work I created to try and share what it is that I've done in my body as a bleeding human, and the work of trusting the blood and letting the blood take me where it can take me, and it has taken me over the decades. And I've taught, I guess it first started with a group of witches at a gathering 1999, Euphoria. It was the first time I held open a circle of womenfolk who just wanted to know what it was I was calling blood magic, menstrual magic, and then it evolved into this body of work called Starfire. And I consider the term Starfire to mean the menstrual flow of the goddess. And it's a current. I consider it a current that's available to anyone who bleeds, who wants to tune in to something ancient that's lived in our bodies for tens of thousands of years. And I don't necessarily use a lot of goddess language in the book. I use a lot of human language, and I speak to the space where, you know, not all women bleed, but not all who bleed are women. And I think that's an important distinction to make in our time. But also, I think she calls us. I think she calls us through our blood. And I think she calls us forward and if we're going to dismantle the patriarchy within, we need to start by valuing the menstrual experience. And that's all I've ever, the drum I beat is to value the menstrual experience on a profound level, because everything about a patriarchal culture will diminish it and make it wrong and bad and unclean. And that's just a narrative that's not yours. You weren't born, none of us are born with menstrual shame. We all learn it. Well, everyone learns menstrual shame, not just those who bleed. And I do not believe it was ever designed to be painful. And I think in that assumption or that projection or that, you know, that notion that the menstrual experience is designed to be painful is some of the core loathing of women and those who bleed in our culture. And I think it's how come it takes 7 to 10 years to get a diagnosis of endometriosis. It's why all of those things take place, is because the assumption is it's meant to hurt you. You're a woman. You're a filthy woman. You're a filthy woman who bleeds. And it's like, fuck off. No, we're not. This system is designed to weave us deeply into earth and into cycle and into cycle of life and death, the cycle of winter and spring, the cycle of life, and the creative force. Yeah. I think there's something very powerful about co-creating together as humans, and that we were built for it. that we're designed for community, we're designed for collectiveness. That's actually, and by this extractive behaviour of company and capitalism, that this just takes our skills, takes our work, and exploits it, and takes it away. It makes all the worth and the wealth that should have come from it to everybody is then taken and put somewhere else. But